In special relativity, today we are going to discuss a very important formula proposed by Einstein, which is actually known as mass energy equivalence relation. In fact, this mass energy equivalence relation arises due to the variation of mass with velocity, or in other words you can say due to the relativistic variation of mass. In fact, in classical physics, mass and energy were treated as entirely different entities having separate conservation principles, and those conservation principles are conservation of mass and conservation of energy. According to conservation of mass, in any chemical or physical process, total mass of the system remains conserved, or in other words you can say that the total mass of an isolated system remains conserved in any chemical process, physical process, or any other processes. Similarly, according to conservation of energy, the total energy of an isolated system also remains conserved uh, whenever our system suffers any type of change. It means according to these two principles, that is according to the principle of conservation of mass, mass can be converted into mass and energy can be converted or transformed into another form of energy. But you particularly in micro world, when you say micro world, that means the physics of particles, elementary particles like electron, like proton, like neutron, and so etc. Actually, it is found that these conservation principles are not valid separately, because in micro world there are several examples when we find that these conservation principles are not valid separately. It means total mass of a system does not remain conserved even when the system is isolated. And similarly, the total energy also does not remain conserved if we talk a physical or chemical or any other processes. So, guided from this idea, Einstein proposed that mass and energy cannot be thought separately. But first of all, I have given here some example where actually these conservation principles are not valid. You can take example of a formation of a nucleus. A nucleus is formed by nucleons, that is neutron and protons. And so if a nucleus is formed and you find the total mass of the nucleons forming the nucleus, first of all, and then once nucleus is formed, you again measure the mass of that nucleus. In general, you find that mass of the resulted nucleus is slightly less than the mass of the than the sum of the masses of the individual nucleons. So in this process, during the formation of nucleus, there is a loss of mass. But according to classical physics, mass should remain same. But in actual practice, we find that the mass of the nucleus is decreased. It means its value is smaller than the sum of the masses of the individual nucleons. Similarly, there is a famous process in nuclear physics that is called nuclear fission, and in nuclear fission the sum of masses of the product nuclei is in fact less than that of the mass of the parent nucleus. We will discuss after this relation a very important phenomena which is called pair production. In fact, in this pair production, a photon is transformed into a pair of massive particles, and those particles are actually electron and its antiparticle, which is called positron. Photon has no rest mass, but electron and positron both have masses, in fact equal, because mass of positron is same as that of mass of the electron. It is antiparticle of electron. Only charge state is different, and all other properties of electron and positron are same. So in this process of pair production, before the process there was no mass, but after the process massive particles are produced. So it appears that mass has been actually created in this process. So you can say that there is a violation of classical principle of conservation of mass in this process of pair of production. Just opposite to pair of production, we have also a phenomenon which is called annihilation. When you say annihilation, actually in this annihilation, what does take place? In fact, during annihilation, the electron and positron get interacted, and after that interaction, we get a gamma photon. And you know, gamma photon has no mass, although electron and positron have masses. So in this annihilation process, actually there is a destruction of mass according to classical principle of mass conservation. But mass conservation says that mass should remain same. So if this process will be in accordance with the classical principle of mass conservation, then definitely when electron and positron will get interacted, then some massive particles should be produced. But in practice, it is found that actually after the interaction of electron and positron, actually a massless particle, which is gamma photon, is produced. So you can say in this process there is a destruction, there is a not validity of the mass conservation principle. So these are a few examples, but actually there are several examples in micro world where we find that the classical principle of conservation of mass and energy are not valid separately. So guided from these relativistic variation of mass and these phenomena, Einstein pointed out that in fact mass and energy are not different entirely, but they are equivalent to one another. In fact, according to Einstein, mass is a condensed form of energy. It means you can say that mass and energy are equivalent, and it is possible that mass may be converted into energy and energy may be converted into mass. So whenever we consider a principle that mass plus energy of a system will remain conserved in a process, then the result will be valid. So according to Einstein, there should be a conservation principle that mass plus energy of the system should remain constant if the system is isolated. In fact, when you say that mass may be converted into energy, in fact, when you calculate the binding energy of a nucleus, as I have given the example earlier, that during the formation of a nucleus, some mass is decreased, actually that decreased mass appears in the form of energy. So here you can see that mass has been converted into energy. Similarly, in annihilation, actually the mass of electron and positron get destroyed. Actually that destroyed mass appears in the form of energy, and in nuclear fission too, mass is converted into energy. Similarly, you can see that energy may be also converted into mass, as in case of pair production, since gamma photon is interacted with a nucleus and we get electron and positron pair. So before the interaction of gamma photon with the nucleus, there were no mass, but after that we get massive particles. So in this process of pair production, there is a creation of mass. So you can say that separately mass of a system cannot be remain conserved. Similarly, separately the total energy of the system will also not remain conserved, but mass plus energy will remain conserved. So, on the basis of these facts, Einstein pointed out that, in fact, mass and energy are equivalent. In fact, you know from mass variation formula that actually our particle has a particular mass, which is its inherent property, that is called its that is called its rest mass. Actually, rest mass is an inherent mass of the particle, and in fact that rest mass is equivalent to an energy which is actually an internal energy according to Einstein, and this internal energy was not known before the idea of Einstein. In fact, this internal energy is known as rest mass energy. So, on the basis of these facts, Einstein, using the formula of mass relativistic mass variation, found the famous mass energy equivalence relation. Actually, this famous mass energy equivalence relation of Einstein is expressed as E equal to mc square. So this was all about the mass energy equivalence relation and introduction. Now, first of all, we will derive this famous formula, and after this derivation in another video, you will see its important consequences and some of the calculations and then problems. So this is actually a very important concept, and the problems based on this idea is very important for various competitive examinations which in you appear. So first of all, I am going to derive this famous formula E equal to mc square. And you know, for for finding energy, there is a simple technique in physics that we always calculate work done by a force, and you know work done is equivalent to, or you can say equal to, energy. So definitely our process will be based on this fact that first of all we will calculate work done by a force on a moving particle, and after that we will be able to derive this formula. So for derivation, let us consider there is a particle in motion, and the velocity of this particle is v at any time t. Let us consider. And when its velocity is v, then its effective mass is m. You know, effective mass means mass in motion. It means when the particle is moving with velocity v, then its mass is m, and this time is t. And we actually apply a force F on it. For simplicity, here I am considering the one-dimensional motion of the particle to get the result. So you can apply this force in the direction of motion of the particle so that the motion will be one-dimensional. So let us consider we have applied a force F on a particle whose effective mass or mass in motion is m when it was moving with velocity v. You know, if F force will be applied on this particle, then this F will be defined in terms of Newton's second law of motion. So you can say let F be the force applied on a particle of effective mass m. When you say effective mass, it means mass in motion. You have already studied the mass variation formula. Effective mass m moving with velocity v, moving with velocity v. Then you know from Newton's second law of motion. Then from second law of motion. You know, second law of motion simply states that the applied force will be equal to rate of change in momentum, and mathematically we write it F equal to dp by dt, where p, what is this p? You know, p is momentum of our particle, and when you say momentum, it means linear momentum of the particle at time t. So this is momentum of the particle. And you know, this momentum at time t will be what? Since mass of the particle is m and its velocity is v, so momentum p will be equal to this mv. So now we will operate this operator d dt on mv. You know, in Newtonian mechanics this m is constant, so we simply take this m outside of the operator and differentiate only v. But here we are considering the mass variation, so we will treat this mass as a function of time. And so here there is a product of two functions. So apply the formula to differentiate the product of two functions of calculus and differentiate it. You will get F is equal to m dv dt and plus v dm dt. V dm dt. This is just a simple differentiation. You know it. And now, you know, if once F is defined, now you can define the work done by this force in an elementary displacement. Let us say, initially at time t, our particle was at this point P, and finally at a time t plus dt. Here time is t and here time is t plus dt. And in this short interval of time dt, our particle has been displaced by dx. So, and we are applying actually the force F in the direction of this displacement. So you know from the definition of work that work done in this process when the particle suffers a displacement dx in time dt, what will be the work done? So work done by the force F in an elementary displacement dx. If we denote this work done by delta W, then what will be this? This will be simply F dot dx. And as you have considered that these two vectors are in same direction, so this will be simply F dx cos 0. Since F is parallel to dx, it means both are in same direction. So angle between these two vectors will be 0. And simply this will be F dx, because you know cos 0 is equal to 1. Now we will substitute the value of this F which you have obtained just now. You can see in this equation 1, you have obtained the value of F from Newton's second law of motion. So now let us substitute it. F is equal to what? You know F is equal to m dv dt plus v dm dt times this dx. So now let us write this RHS in an arranged way. You can write it as m dv into dx by dt. You can write it, and plus v dm into dx by dt. But you know this dx by dt is what? You know very well that this is simply the velocity of our particle v. So when you will replace this dx by dt by v, what will be your result? You can see this will be m v dv plus, here dx by dt is v and one v is already present, so this will be v square dm. So this elementary work done by the force applied on the particle in a short interval of time dt, or you may say in the short displacement dx, is equal to this much. So let us say this is equation number 2. Now in fact, this you have definitely studied a very important theorem of classical mechanics, that is called work energy theorem. And actually that work energy theorem states that the total work done by forces acting on a system is always equal to change in kinetic energy of the system. And here we have seen that the work done by the force F applied on the particle is delta W during a short interval of time dt, and this is equal to this much. So definitely, according to the work energy theorem, we can write that this delta W is simply equal to change in kinetic energy of the system. As the interval is very small, this work done will be very small, and so change in kinetic energy will be also infinitesimally small. So according to work energy theorem, we write it WE, it means work energy theorem. According to work energy theorem, this delta W will be equal to dt, and dt means change in kinetic energy. This is change in kinetic energy of the particle. Change in kinetic energy of the particle. So in fact in this equation 2, you can write here dt instead of delta W. So now write dt instead of delta W. So you can see that dt will be equal to mv dv plus v square dm. This is actually the change in kinetic energy of our particle during that very short interval of time dt. Now RHS of this equation, where you see that there is dm, it means we have considered that mass is varying relativistically. So now we will apply actually the relativistic mass variation formula to get the value of the expression in RHS of this equation 3. So from a relativistic mass variation formula, a relativistic mass variation formula. You know this formula very well because you have already studied it in previous lecture. So what is this relativistic mass variation formula? You know this is m is equal to m naught over 1 minus this is 1 minus v square by c square root. 1 minus v square over c square root. So if you will square this equation both sides, your result will be m square equal to m naught square over 1 minus v square by c square. 1 minus v square by c square. And if you will take here the LCM, then this result will be m naught square c square over c square minus v square. So you can say that this m square is equal to this much. Now let us take the cross multiplication. You can see this will be m square c square minus m square v square, and this equal to m naught square c square. As you can see in this equation, actually m is present, v is present, but the term which we have to evaluate, that contains actually dv and dm. So definitely we must take the differential of this equation. So you can say taking differential of this. We are going to take the differential of this above equation, and when you will take differential, you see this first term. Actually c square you know is a universal constant. So differential will be of m square, and what will be that? Differential of this m square will be equal to 2m into dm, and minus. Now here m and v both are variables, so we will apply the differential of product of two functions here. And so what will be this? You can see when we will take the differential of m square v square, this will be simply 2m dm into v square, and plus now 2v dv into m square. This is differential of m square v square. And in RHS you can see this term m naught square c square is an absolute constant, because you know m naught is the rest mass of our particle, which is inherent property of the particle, and for a given particle this m naught is constant. And c, you know, according to second postulate of special relativity, that this c is an absolute constant. So RHS of this equation is an absolute constant, and so its differential will be equal to 0. So I have written here 0. Now arrange this term from here. You can see this 2m factor is present, in fact, in all terms in LHS. So if you will take this 2m as a common factor, then what will be your result? You can see this will be c square dm, and minus here I have taken 2m as a common factor, so this will be v square dm, and plus 2m has been taken as a common factor, so here there will be in fact m v dv, and this is equal to 0. Since this m is not equal to 0, so you may write this equation in this form. So this implies in fact mv dv plus v square dm, and this equal to c square dm, and say this equation is 4. Now you can compare this equation 4 and the equation which has been defined in here in equation 3. In fact, you can see that in equation 3, mv dv plus v square dm is equal to dt. But in this equation 4, this mv dv plus v square dm is equal to c square dm. So if you will equate these two equations 3 and 4, what will be your result? You can see easily that from 3 and 4, we will find that this dt is equal to c square dm. dt is equal to c square dm. So to get the value of kinetic energy T, we will now integrate this equation, because the equation contains differential, and you know whenever an equation is in terms of differential of some function and we have to get the value of that very function, there is only one mathematical tool, and that is integration. We must integrate it. Therefore, let us take the integral. Integral of dt equal to c square is a constant, so we take it outside of the integral. So c square integral of dm. You know, when our particle was at rest, then its mass is m naught, which is called rest mass. So the lower limit for this m, we take m naught. And we have considered that when this particle is moving with velocity v, then its mass is m. So limits for this dm will be m naught to m. And you know, when actually the mass will be m naught, it means particle is at rest, and at rest the kinetic energy of the particle will be in fact 0. So corresponding to this limit m naught, we put here limit 0, because at rest kinetic energy will be 0, because kinetic energy is in fact energy in motion. So, and when the mass of the particle becomes m and it is moving with velocity v, then let us say when velocity of the particle is v, then its kinetic energy is t. We considered it. So corresponding to this m, we put here the limit t for kinetic energy. And this is a very simple integration. You can see this will be t equal to c square into m minus m naught. Actually, this is a very important formula, or you can say this is the expression for kinetic energy, or you can say that it is a relativistic formula for kinetic energy. So I am writing it as a very important equation A. So this is a relativistic formula, for kinetic energy of a particle. And you must remember this formula, although we have derived it, but for solving the numerical problem, you must remember this formula for kinetic energy, or for relativistic kinetic energy. You know, in classical physics, kinetic energy is simply half mv square. But this formula will not work well when we are considering the relativistic situation. So definitely you should note that relativistic formula for kinetic energy of a particle is what? This is t square equal to c square into m minus m naught. You can see here that this m minus m naught, this is actually a relativistic increment of mass. You know, with increase in velocity, mass increases relativistically. So when the particle was at rest, its mass was m naught, and when it is moving with velocity v, then its mass becomes m. So this m minus m naught, which I have denoted by the symbol delta m, is actually the increment of mass, or you can say the relativistic increment of mass. And you can see from this equation A that this increment of mass, or relativistic increment of mass, is converted into kinetic energy. Mass increment has been converted into kinetic energy. So this delta m is converted into kinetic energy. So this is a very important fact, that relativistically mass increases, and that increased mass appears in the form of kinetic energy. So this formula for kinetic energy, which is actually T equal to delta mc square, this formula actually shows that the kinetic energy of moving mass is c square times of the increased mass, or gain in mass. This is actually gain in mass. So when you will multiply this gain in mass by this c square, you will get the kinetic energy. So kinetic energy is simply equivalent to the mass which has been in fact increased due to the relativistic variation of mass. In fact, this formula points out that the increase in mass is an indication and measure of the kinetic energy. So this indicates, this formula indicates that increased mass is the indication and measure of kinetic energy. Measure of kinetic energy. You know, this m naught, which actually I have written here, you know, this m naught is actually known as rest mass, and this rest mass is actually an inherent property of our particle. You say that particle has a mass when it is at rest, and that mass is equal to m naught. But this mass is the actual mass of your particle, that is the building block of your particle. And so the energy corresponding to this, that is m naught c square, is regarded as a form of internal energy or inherent energy of the particle. So as I have told you earlier, that this m naught c square is form of an internal energy. And so you can express the rest mass of any particle in terms of energy. So if you denote that rest mass energy, this is in fact form of an internal energy which is called rest mass energy. And if we denote that rest mass energy by the symbol E naught, then this E naught will be equal to m naught c square. And you can see from this important result that it is possible that we can express the rest mass of a particle in terms of a unit of energy. In fact, in high energy physics or particle physics or nuclear physics, there is a tradition that mass of a particle is expressed in terms of the units of energy. So while finding the or in saying the value of rest mass, we simply say the rest mass energy of that particle. For example, you can see for an electron, in fact m naught, rest mass of an electron is, you know, 9.1 into 10 to the power minus 31 kg. So if you will put here this E naught, the value of m naught in this equation, and also the value of C, you will get that this E naught for electron is equal to 0.51 MeV, mega electron volt. So we can write mass of an electron or rest mass of an electron in terms of this energy unit. So you can say that rest mass of an electron is in fact 0.51 mega electron volt per c square. So in this way you can express rest mass of any particle in terms of unit of energy. This is a very useful concept in high energy physics, or you can say in nuclear physics or particle physics. In fact, in those conditions, we always express the rest mass in terms of the units of energy. So now let us see. We have obtained that kinetic energy of the particle is delta m c square and delta m is m minus m naught. So now you can see that T is equal to m minus m naught c square. So from here, here c square is a common factor, in fact, into c square. So you can see this T can be written as mc square minus m naught c square. So we can write from here mc square is equal to T plus m naught c square. T plus m naught c square. You know T is what? This is kinetic energy of our particle, and this m naught c square is rest mass energy of your particle. This is inherent energy, rest mass energy. So for a particle in motion, when you will add this kinetic energy of the particle and its internal energy, that is rest mass energy, definitely you will get its total energy. So sum of this T and m naught c square may be interpreted as that it is the total energy of our particle. And so if E equal to total energy of the particle, then what will be this E? This total energy will be simply equal to sum of the kinetic energy plus this internal energy, that is rest mass energy. So now you can see that since T plus m naught c square may be interpreted as total energy of our particle, so from this relation you can compare these two equations and you will find that this E is equal to mc square. So you can conclude that the total energy of a particle in motion is E, and this is equal to mc square. So you can see we have derived this famous formula equal to mc square, and in fact this is known as Einstein's mass energy equivalence relation. Einstein's mass energy equivalence relation. So I hope you have understand all the steps clearly to derive this famous formula equal to mc square. So in fact this formula has a very large physical significance, but in today's lecture we are not going to discuss the physical significances of this formula. I have only derived it and only discussed why Einstein has thought that energy should be equivalent to mass. So only these two aspects has been discussed in this lecture. In fact, in next lecture we will interpret this very famous formula which represents equivalence of mass and energy, and then you will get actually the clear picture of this equation. What this equation actually physically represents, we will discuss in the next lecture.